Here we are, sitting with the beautiful, the gorgeous Celeste. How are you?
I'm good.
Good, that's magnificent. Glad to hear, glad to hear. So, just wanted to catch up with you. How are things going? Actually, before we catch up, let's recap. Let's go a little further back, right?
Okay.
Because I know that following you online, you have been venturing on a cross country tour,
Yep.
right?
Right.
So you have pretty much embarked on this journey
Hmm.
where you want to see the entire nation.
Right. Yep.
So what sparked this idea?
So this whole thing started in the end of 2020, 2020, 2021. So it's been 3 years now. So 2021, and to get to that point, you kind of have to back up a little bit, of course. So, some of people know, was married for many, many years, have a daughter, and we got divorced. Had been single for a long time, and then had been with somebody for about 2 years. And while we were together, he was about 5 years from retirement. Um, and anyway, we talked about after he retired that we would go traveling, that we'd get an RV and we'd travel the country and see all the sights and whatnot. Because I was only, I don't know, whatever that makes me at that point, 45, and he was in his late 50s or about 50, I guess, and we had a lot of time left, right? So what are you gonna do if you retire? Things went south, as some relationships do. We broke up. I was like, I still want to travel. I don't have to travel with somebody. Like, you can still travel by yourself. And I was on disability at the time, so I had kind of a pretty low income. You don't get a lot on disability, and had a 3-bedroom house that was getting hard for me to take care of by myself, so I was having to ask for help a lot. And I finally just said, screw it. I'm not working, I don't have, my kid's not here. What am I gonna do? It's like, am I gonna sit here and be bored and do the same thing every day? Or am I gonna go and do something? So, yeah, I'd lived in that house for 15 years, I think we've been there. Atlas is gonna play with his squeaky. You can see his tail. Anyways, so I gave 2 months notice and packed everything up, and my friends gifted me this van from their electrical company as one of their old work vans, and started converting it. A couple of friends helped me convert it. Again, 2 very independent, self-reliant women that helped me get everything set up and ready for the road.
Magnificent.
And me and Atlas have been not all over the country yet. I think we're at 36 states now.
36.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that we've at least, done a little bit of exploring in.
You see, one of the things that really sparked
Yeah.
my interest in getting to know this story is because that is one of my dreams. One of my dreams is to
Atlas,
go
come here,
throughout
baby. Come here, honey.
to go throughout the nation
Mm-hmm.
and explore the vast beauty, because you see a lot of people, they are fixated on leaving the country, traveling outside the country, right? But there's so much beauty in here, right?
Yeah.
It's just mainstream media focuses on like 3-4 cities.
Right.
But
They're kind of the main.
New York, mainstream media just focuses on those places. That's what people think when they
Right.
think traveling in within the states or Vegas. You know,
Yeah.
those are like the five,
Right.
top five destinations. But there's really so much vast beauty here
Mhm.
in the country. You know,
Absolutely.
if
Yeah.
you're into like natural beauty, like mountains or
Yeah.
waterways, you have the Pacific Northwest.
Yep.
You know, you have like. So I
Yeah,
just
so
want to
when-
know what are some of the
Yeah.
places that really captivated you that caught your heart.
So when we started, come lay down with me, yes. Come here, no, come around. So when we started, we're from Washington State originally. So we started in the upper Northwest, and
The good PNW.
so when we started, we ended up not leaving Washington until November. It was like right before Thanksgiving time, so the weather was starting to get pretty icky. So we took the coast highway and just hightailed it down the west coast, which is one of my favorite places anyways. I've always spent a lot of time on the coast. I'm a water baby, an ocean baby, so that's always been a big thing for me. So we went all the way down the coast to San Diego, and then we cut, I think it's Highway 20 down there. Anyway, we took a left and we drove all the way over to Maryland. We just, in like a week, because I wanted to be, my daughter is in Maryland and I wanted to see her for Christmas that first year that I left. So took like a month, drove down the west coast. I've been all along there.
2021.
2021. And then took a week and drove to Maryland, cross country. And then when we left there, I was new to this whole thing. And there's a big learning curve in switching from living in a house to being on the road. And so one of the things, so one of the things that I didn't want to do, and just the way my brain works, minutely planning like where to stop and where to stay and all these things, like my brain, I can't, that's really difficult for me. My brain just doesn't work that way. So basically I took the approach of, initially I took Highway 1, and the theory was keep the water on your left and stop where you want to stop. And so we drove all the way down to Key West, and it took us about, I want to say 3 months, and literally some days we'd drive a half an hour, and that's as far as we make it because there's so many things to see and do and whatever, and so we'd be stopping, and it's like you go, and I did look on the map and the atlas, and there's a couple of other sites that I looked and like, okay, what's the so the main things I look for are national parks or national monuments, national historical places, anything like that, and I tag all of those. And then I look for, there's a site called Atlas Obscuria, I think it is. I don't never say it right, but it's like weird roadside attractions. It's like off the wall, offbeat kinds of things. So I look at that for kind of the general area where we're going, see if there's things we want to stop at. And that's where we find a lot of the kind of odd things, like we just went to the Pez factory up in Connecticut, where they make Pez, it's like not something that you would necessarily even know existed because it's not, it's not right on the side of the road, and it's not, unless you happen to see a flyer for it somewhere. So we stop at places like that. I always tag the good dog parks. We spend an inordinate amount of time at dog parks. And what else? So we do museums, and yeah, like the natural, like you said, geological type of stuff. The, you know, and I mark a lot of those things, hikes and the, you know, beautiful scenery and things like that. I don't always get to do them because of my health issues, but I stick them on there, and it just depends on how I'm feeling when I get there. If it's some things you can just drive by and like, oh hey look, that's cool. And other things, it's, you know, it's a 3-mile hike and it's not something that, you know, is gonna happen or whatever. So
Just being
kinda,
in the vicinity is good enough.
right, yeah, you know, find, and sometimes you find other things around there that are accessible that work just as well. So, yeah, so we've spent pretty much that first year exploring, like I said, all the way down to Key West, and then we came back up the west side of Florida. And that was basically our first, like that took us into, we ended up getting stuck in Florida because we had some van repairs, so I was there, we were in Florida until, I wanna say,
Nice place to get stuck.
June, I wanna say it was late June. It was getting way too hot to be in a metal box because it's the cargo van, so it's, but then, you know, I just picked a new body of water, and so we drove straight through from Florida up to the Great Lakes, and then we followed the shore of the Great Lakes, and so that was, you know, our second summer was up there. And then this summer, you know, we went back south during the winter time. Went down to, I always have to go for a couple months down to Florida because that's where my doctors are now. So I go back down there for a couple months, and then last year we went over to, we actually ended up going back to Oregon last summer. And that was really fun. I went with a women's group to do rock hounding, and there was like 20 of us that camped out in the mountains and went looking for crystals every day, swam in the river and whatever. Anyway, so we did some exploring in Eastern Oregon, Nevada, Arizona. Yeah. That kind of strip there. I'm forgetting a state, but it's okay.
So there's the,
Denver. We went to Denver.
yeah, that's because
we went to Denver.
Because I kind of try to remember that area
Smoky,
as
is
the
it Smoky Mountain National Park?
I call it the UCAN, right? So it's Utah, Colorado, Arizona, Nevada. UCAN, right? So that's that region right there of 4 states, the UCAN. Okay.
And there's still a bunch of national parks in that area that we haven't done.
That's one of the places I have to go. I have to go.
So yeah, we'll definitely end up back that direction at some point. And then this summer, we spent a good part of last winter in near Las Vegas, a little town called Boulder, and visiting some of my friends in southeastern California. Being a pill. There's a really cool, I'm really into geology and collecting rocks, like I said. And there's a rock club in Las Vegas, of all places, and they have a shop that you can use. So I was learning how to like cut and polish my rocks and do that stuff. So yeah, so I spent quite a while down there in Vegas area, and then back to Florida, and then we did New England. This summer was while it was warm. Ditched Florida and Arizona and came up to New England. So we did Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, upstate New York. And then here we are back in Jersey. So it's like That was 3 years, and it seems like it just went by really fast.
Amazing.
And we still have, you know, the whole center part of the country to visit. And I don't know how I'm going to figure that out, because that you actually have to plan.
Right. Well, I'm confident
So,
with your
figure it out.
experiences. Yes, with your experiences already, I'm confident it will happen. And we could do a future next segment that
Yeah, absolutely.
goes into detailing what those journeys brought about.
Yeah, 'cause-
However, before we go to those next journeys, let's concentrate on these current journeys for the past 3 years.
Mhm.
So, let's say this. What say you? Top 5 cities or states?
Ooh, that's tough.
Ooh.
I am a sucker. So, top 2 states or general areas, definitely Florida. Obviously, I've been all over Florida, and it just, as long as you time the weather, you know, I love being able to go down and it just be sunshine and 75, 80 degrees all the time, and you know, whatever beaches you want to go to. Or the thing that I find so fascinating in Florida is that we all think beaches, especially probably, I don't know, I do. I don't know about the rest of the West Coasters, but there's so much other brain is having a fritz. Landscaping is the only thing I'm thinking, and that's not the right word. There's so many different types of places. So you can go to the, you know, mangrove areas. You can go to the Everglades, which I always thought of as a forest, and
I've
it's
been there.
not. It's just grass, which was, when I first started driving through, I was like, what is this? It was very strange to me.
Which they have sawgrass, which is a very interesting
Sawgrass is a very interesting
dynamic to have in your region, because this was also weaponized in certain instances where people certain during certain revolutionary wars in early United States history, they would go through the sawgrass, and if you didn't know that was there, woof, you were in for some real trouble.
Yeah. That was one of the things that I found really interesting the first year that I was on, that I explored the East Coast, was I went to so many parks and places that related to the Civil War. And excuse me. And one of the things that, again, I don't know if it's just me or a West Coast thing, but when being from the West Coast, when I think forest, I think evergreen trees, quite a bit of brush underneath in the understory, blackberries, big bushes, you know, sticks and moss and different stuff on the ground. And it's really hard. Like, you can't really walk through it quietly unless you really know what you're doing. You know, you're climbing over stuff, you're moving stuff. So when you read a book and you hear about the military forces hiding in the woods, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, you can do that. But moving massive amounts of troops and things through the woods, like, it's different every place you go. And going to all these different historic sites, you see, like, aspen groves, totally different. Straight trees, they're separated. There's no understory. There's nothing growing underneath. It's really easy to just walk through, ride your horse through, whatever. Go to other places in Georgia, in Florida, in, you know, wherever, and there's tons of undergrowth, or there's grass, but it's not really grass, it's actually swamp. and so again, if you don't know, and so seeing that, like you said, seeing that in how it makes those stories that we read as we were kids take on a whole different light. Like, oh, it kind of makes sense now that, you know, how they were hiding or how they were moving, you know, sneaking up on people through the woods. Like, you can do that in certain areas, you know. So it's been really fun to see. You can't just say there was somebody was walking through the forest. You have to really describe it, because depending on where you're from, it has a completely different meaning. For instance, okay, you're from the East Coast, oak trees, right? Huge oak trees, big branches, they're really wide, they go for 30, 40, 50 feet. We have oak trees in Washington. They're maybe 50 feet tall, and they're maybe 50 feet wide total. Like, they're straight up and down. There's one main stalk straight up. There's no, like, yeah, there's none of that. Exactly. No, it's a completely different, when you say oak tree, like, I never understood the songs, like country songs that say, oh, they met at the big oak tree, or they, you know, or underneath in the shade of the big oak tree. I'm like, there's no shade under an oak tree. Like, what the hell are these people talking about, you know? You come down here, you come down to Georgia, whatever, it's like, oh, you go to Texas and see, oh my God, oh, I get it now, you know? It's, and so, yeah, so, I don't know, I go off on these tangents, but, yeah, it's just, it's just so amazing.
Amazing.
You know?
Nature in itself is amazing.
Right. Yeah.
And this is why.
And we have so much of it, and you just have this one teeny tiny picture if you've only ever lived in one place.
Yes.
Like, because, I mean, I've seen pictures of places on TV, on whatever, but it doesn't register, it doesn't click, you know, and I think that's part of our, if I go off on another tangent, part of our apathy when we see, especially on the West Coast, when we see, like, news and stuff about tornado damage, hurricanes, flooding. It's like, yeah, it means something completely, it doesn't register the same, because there's such a vast difference in the way your surroundings interact with that, you know.
Absolutely.
I could go on for an hour about natural disasters and their impact and
we will have
everything.
time for that.
That's another big story.
We will have time for that. We could do a whole another one for that. So,
yeah. But I don't know if that answered your question or not.
I know time is limited, so what I will do is, okay, I don't want to put you, let's remove you off the hot seat a little bit. So I don't want you to feel like, oh, I don't want to exclude this state or that state. So
that's right. I didn't answer your question, did I?
No. You got into. You started,
I changed directions.
But
there's my ADD going.
And we love that. We love it because this is what this is about. This is about information, getting to know. You know, so this is beautiful. But that is my job. So let's
go back.
Let's bring it. So
I started to answer. So that whole big spiel was Florida.
Florida.
Upper Michigan, upstate Michigan, or I guess it's Upper Michigan, and upstate New York. Yeah, that's right.
Upper Michigan.
Upper Michigan. Yep, the UP. Yeah, they call it the UP. It's basically a state in and of itself. But
can you explain?
Yeah. So Michigan, they call it upstate. They call it the UP and the Mitten. So, and there's a lake. It's Lake Superior.
Yes.
That's in between. So they don't really even connect. They're like I said, they're like two separate states like this, and there's a lake in between. And there's just a little bridge that connects it. But the UP people and the rest of the Michigan people, it's like upstate New York and New York City. Like they're a breed apart.
Who's upstate
From
and
each
who's
other.
New York City?
It's pretty well. The UP is much more. I'm saying this word, rural. So it's a lot more small towns.
UP will be upstate.
Would be upstate, yeah. So small towns, they're it's out in the woods, lots of rivers and lakes and fishing and all of that kind of stuff. It's like it would be like Hicktown type.
Okay.
So definitely western upstate or very north upstate New York.
Very,
Yeah.
very north upstate.
more like Vermont, New Hampshire, basically.
So we
Yeah.
have Miami, Michigan,
So Florida, Michigan.
Florida, Michigan. Now we're going to number 3.
So probably I'd probably have to go to break down to region. So Northwest California, Southwest Oregon, like on the border,
Junction.
the
Okay.
junction on the coast.
On the coast.
Yeah, so it's very specific. It's kind of like where the redwoods are.
So what cities would be namely that we would kind of probably
You wouldn't. You would
wouldn't,
not know.
because this area is just
they're
that
little tiny
unique.
towns. They're little tiny towns, and they're right on between the water above the Pacific Ocean and the redwood forests, and they're just really quaint, quiet. But there's tons of hiking, and the ocean is right there, and you can get down to lots of good rock hounding in there, and really rocky shorelines, tide pools, waves crashing on the shoreline and all that. So
natural beauty.
yeah, it's just gorgeous, and that it's a place that I go back to. I've always gone back to. Yeah,
go back.
it's like
It's one of those places you have
one of
to
the
go
places
back.
where I'm always stopping.
Number 4.
New Mexico. New Mexico. Probably, and it's kind of odd just because the biggest thing, and I'm guessing Utah will probably maybe overtake that when I get there, because one of the main reasons I like that area is the native history. All the native history that's there. All the pueblos and it's just so.
Which is where Cinco de Mayo comes from. See, because a lot of people, I'm sorry, I hate to interject,
No,
but
you're good.
a lot of people, they have this misunderstanding that the Cinco de Mayo is a celebration of all Mexico. No, it's not really Mexican. It's the Pueblo.
Yeah.
That's their holiday, Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
It's the Pueblo when they defeated the French.
Yeah, so that I've always been fascinated by Native American things, and the fact that there's so much architecture and artifacts
That's still
there that you can see and interact with and whatnot is just fascinating to me.
So that's and to cap off our top 5.
No.
This is where it gets tricky. This is
Yeah.
where it gets hard because you feel like, oh,
Where
I don't want to
else,
leave this
baby?
one. I don't want to leave that one.
Oh, thank you, love. You're goofy. How about you lay down? I'm gonna say, I wish I could remember the name of the town without looking at my map. I'm gonna say the west coast, the Wisconsin side of Lake Michigan.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
We double dip in
There-
Michigan?
Well, no, because it's on the Wisconsin side.
Oh.
So technically it's Wisconsin. Even though it's Lake Michigan.
I have my orange for the cheeseheads.
There you
so.
go. So that is, yeah, it's, Lake Michigan is like an ocean in and of itself. I mean, it has tides, it has waves, it's huge. And amazing geology all around there. And lots of kind of mid-sized towns on the Wisconsin side that, you know, so there's lots of things that you can do, lots of places you can go, but it's not so small like the UP is, but not as big as like being in a real town. If that makes sense. You know, I don't know. It's just that kind of good mid-size, cozy place, you know.
And this story was necessary because we have so much beauty here in the U.S.
Yeah,
And
it's awesome.
It's
amazing.
really undiscovered
Mm-hmm.
because we live in a mainstream society.
Right.
Whatever is conducive to commerce is what sells, you know,
Right.
and that's what gets publicized and promoted. But these are beautiful
Yeah.
things that exist in our country.
Yeah, and if you look at the Facebook page, our travel page, or Instagram, or any of that, most of the time, I'm not a big city person, so most of the time you're not seeing things like, I do generally drive through the big cities just to say, hey, I drove through Chicago, I've been there. You know, I drove through New York, great, saw it. But I don't spend tons of time there.
Don't blame me.
Vegas is probably the only place, oh, there's a few places. I don't consider any of the Florida cities, except maybe Miami, to be
Like a
big cities, because that's another tirade. But they're so spread out, you know? It's like, it doesn't feel like you're constricted, like New York, Seattle. It's like, there's not big skyscrapers everywhere. It's just, you know, anyway. Yeah, so I skip all that stuff and do the smaller towns, the little towns. I try to stay off of the main
Good for you. Good for you.
road.
And
Hit
what-
all those unknown national parks and state parks. Oh, some of our state parks, amazing.
the-
Florida state parks, yeah, there's a million, but
Yeah, New Jersey
there,
has a bunch
there's,
of them.
yeah,
Yeah, New
they're
Jersey.
they're absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're hiding little gems that you'd never know.
And
Yeah.
it's places that you don't even have to travel overseas to see real natural beauty. It's right here in your backyard.
We even have castles.
Ooh.
There's even some castles here on the east.
Before we log out,
There's
give
even
us
some-
give us a little bit of
There's
that.
even some castles here on the
Give
on the
us-
East Coast.
Give us a little castle history.
Well, there's one in, it's not technically a castle, it's more of a turret in Florida, that's made out of, fossilized coral, basically, which is what the ground of Florida, most of Florida is, because it used to be an ocean bed. Here goes my science. So when they dig, they, this is, I'm gonna blank, I'm really bad with names of places, so I have to look at this. Why, if you ever look at my, maybe I'll publish it someday. If you ever look at my map on Google Map on my account, I have everything marked. So I have every the key places that I stop, the key places that I want to go, I have like, everything. It's like this just mass of dots, and they're all coded. So, anyways, southeast Florida, there's a place. It's called the Coral Castle, and it's basically this guy that made this amazing area, but it started out with basically a turret that there's a little apartment in there, and he lived in it while he did all this other creative building. But when he made it, as he basically dug a moat. So he would cut, because it's all like solid rock, so he'd cut bricks out of the fossilized coral in the ground and then use those to build. So what became basically a moat along two sides of the property are the bricks that he used to make all of these just incredible structures inside the perimeter.
And what part of Florida?
And you can go and tour it now.
What part of Florida?
It's in Southwest Florida. I'll put a link up for it. It's called Coral Castle.
Coral Castle.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I believe there's one here in New Jersey, or it might be in Connecticut. I'm not sure where
Okay.
but yeah, just if you go on, people don't utilize Google Maps for as much as, literally if you go on Google Maps like every day, I put in dog parks near me. You don't have to know what specifics, I mean really general, and it pulls up whatever. So you can just put castles in New Jersey and it'll pull up anything. I mean, you're gonna get like White Castle coming up, which definitely doesn't count.
Lunch break.
And yeah, don't go eat there. It's terrible. All my West Coasters don't even bother. It's awful. I don't know why you guys think it's so great. It's absolutely the worst food ever. But anyway, back to castles. So anyways, that's how you find a lot of things like that. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Food is one of those things that's very regional. You know, they always said, you gotta try a po' boy when you're down south. You gotta try a lobster roll when you're up north. It's just a frickin' hoagie sandwich, same as we have on the West Coast, just has a different name. It's just meat and cheese and lettuce and tomato on bread on a hoagie roll. That's all it is. That's a hoagie sandwich or a sub sandwich. We have those too, we just don't call them a po' boy. The lobster roll doesn't even have any sauce or anything. It's just lobster on a roll. Like, just skip the roll and give me the lobster on the plate, not be, So there are some things that, okay, great regional food, that's fine, but those two were, very sad. Just my opinion. Just my opinion.
We love it, we love it, we love it. Hey, Celeste, this was very informative.
You know a little bit more about me now?
Very informative, very in-depth, and I'm sure we will all not only appreciate this, but we will also get some understanding of the vast beauty of our country, and even visit some of these places which have been referenced in this video.
Awesome. Thanks for chatting.
Thank you for having us.